I was standing under the torrential rain, pressed against the cold brick wall of the university library, feeling the raindrops slide down my face, mixing with the tears I desperately let fall. The phone in my hand buzzed incessantly, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. It was him, my father, the man who had just shattered my world with a single message. Your tuition has been canceled. I spent it on something more important. Figure it out yourself. A thousand thoughts swirled in my head, but none formed a coherent sequence. More important. What could be more important than his own son's future? Behind me, the murmurs of students, their laughter, the creak of doors opening. It all felt distant, unreal. My world had shrunk to this cold phone in my hand and the oppressive void in my chest. I remembered years ago when I'd just started at the Complutense University's architecture program. My father had driven me here, gushing about how proud he was, how vital a good education was. His eyes sparkled then. Now they probably sparkled looking at some shop window in Paris while I stood here, broken and lost. A sudden gust of wind hit me, soaking me to the bone. I needed to go somewhere, but where? The dorm was far and I didn't have money for a taxi. I shoved the phone in my pocket, trying to steady my trembling hands, and walked aimlessly, oblivious to the puddles under my feet. That night I fell asleep on an old bench in Retiro Park, covered only by my thin jacket. The cold pierced through me and hunger gnawed at my stomach. My thoughts churned relentlessly. How would I pay rent, food? What would I do about my studies, my only hope? Just 1 year, one damn year, until graduation. The next morning the bright sun woke me, glaring straight into my eyes. My head throbbed, my body ached. I stood, feeling empty. Slowly a plan began to form in my mind, the only one that seemed remotely feasible. I had to find a job, any job. The first few days were a futile search. Doors closed one after another. No experience, no vacancies, will call you. Desperation grew daily. I called my mom, trying to sound upbeat, but her worried voice cut through me. She didn't know the full truth. I told her I'd decided to take a gap year to earn some money. I couldn't tell her that her ex-husband, the man she once loved, had traded my future for his new wife's whims. Finally, in a small cafe in Malasaña, luck found me. The owner, an older man with kind eyes and a thick gray mustache named Miguel, offered me a dishwashing job. The pay was low, but it was something. I clung to that lifeline like a castaway. The work was grueling. My hands were constantly red and cracked from hot water and detergents. I collapsed into bed each night, but even in that exhaustion there was a strange comfort. It drowned out the anxious thoughts, keeping them from consuming me entirely. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I worked 12-hour shifts, and at night, when things quieted down, I opened my textbooks and tried to study. My eyes drooped with sleep, but I forced myself to read. I couldn't afford to give up. I couldn't let my father win. One day, during a brief break, I sat on a grimy crate behind the cafe, trying to choke down a piece of stale bread. My phone rang. It was Diego, my best friend and classmate. "Hey Marco, where have you been? It's been forever since we saw you in class. Everyone's worried." His voice was full of genuine concern. I mumbled something vague about temporary difficulties, but Diego wasn't one to be fooled. "Come on, Marco, I know something's wrong. Tell me, you know I'm here to help." And I broke. I told him everything, how my father canceled my tuition, the Paris trip, my late-night shifts at the cafe. Tears welled up again, and this time I didn't hold them back. Diego listened quietly, and when I finished, he said, "Marco, you know I come from a simple family. We don't have extra money," but he paused, and I held my breath. "I rent a small room. You can stay with me. It'll at least help you save on rent, and as for your studies, we'll figure something out." I couldn't believe it. Diego's offer was a ray of light in the darkness. Barely holding back sobs, I thanked him. For the first time in months, I felt something like hope. Moving in with Diego changed everything. We shared a tiny room, but it was better than sleeping in the park or a grimy backroom behind the cafe. At night, we studied together, illuminating our books with phone flashlights to avoid waking the neighbors. Diego helped me catch up on missed material, explained complex topics, and encouraged me when I felt like giving up. Miguel, the cafe owner, noticed my efforts too. He gave me more shifts, a small raise, and sometimes let me take leftover food for dinner. He was a man of few words, but his kindness shone in every gesture, every look. One night while I was washing dishes, Miguel approached me, his face serious. "Marco, I've seen how hard you work. You're a good kid and you've got talent. I know you're studying architecture. Current mood, I have some connections. I can talk to my nephew. He runs a small construction company. Maybe he'll take you on as an intern. It'll be tougher than here, but you could apply your knowledge." My heart leaped. An internship. It was what I'd dreamed of, a chance not just to earn money, but to grow in my field. I accepted immediately. The construction job was indeed tough. The calluses on my hands grew thicker, my body ached after every shift, but I saw my university knowledge start to bear fruit. I learned to create budgets, draft plans, and oversee construction quality. I felt myself growing, becoming stronger. Meanwhile, I kept up with my studies. It was incredibly hard, almost unbearable. I slept 3 or 4 hours a day, constantly exhausted, but the thought of my diploma, my dream, pushed me forward. A few months before finishing my degree, my father called. I hadn't answered him since the day he canceled my tuition, but something made me pick up this time. "Marco, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice tired, unusually subdued. I stayed silent, waiting. "I heard you're working and still studying. I'm sorry, son. I was a fool. I made a lot of mistakes." His voice carried sincerity, but the pain he'd caused ran too deep. I didn't know what to say. "I'm so sorry, Marco. It's not an excuse, but that woman, she drained me. I was blinded. And now she's gone, took all the money. I'm left with nothing." Inside, I felt nothing, no joy, no pity, just emptiness. "I'd like to make things right, Marco. I know it's impossible, but maybe we could talk someday." I took a deep breath. "I don't know, Dad. Right now I can't. I need to finish my studies and then we'll see." I hung up, not out of anger, but because I had nothing left to say. My life was so full of struggle that there was no room for old wounds. The day of my final project defense approached. I was at my limit, sleepless nights, constant stress, work, but a fierce strength grew inside me. I knew I'd been through hell and it had made me unstoppable. On the defense day, I stood before the panel, presenting my project. My hands shook, but my voice was steady. I answered questions, explained my ideas, and felt energy surging through me. This was my moment, my triumph. When I finished, silence filled the room, then applause. The panel was impressed. I earned the highest grade. Outside the classroom, Diego was waiting. He ran to me, hugged me, and I felt tears in my eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy and relief. "You did it, Marco, you did it," he shouted, his voice trembling. I nodded, unable to speak, and hugged him tighter. He was my brother, my salvation. Outside, Miguel was waiting, smiling with a small bouquet of flowers in his hands. "Well done, Marco, I'm proud of you." His words meant more to me than any compliment. I hugged him tightly. That night we sat in Miguel's cafe, Diego, Miguel, and me. We laughed, reminisced about all the hardships I'd overcome. I felt incredibly happy. I'd earned my degree. My dream had come true. I'd proven to myself I could do anything. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The future awaited, full of uncertainty. My father, what would become of him? Could I ever forgive him? And my career, would I become a successful architect? These questions lingered, keeping me from fully relaxing. But one thing I knew for certain, I'd never again let anyone define my future. I was the master of my own destiny. The wind rustled the cafe's curtains, bringing the smells of freshly baked bread and coffee. I looked at Diego and Miguel, their simple, kind faces, and felt warmth spread through my chest. I wasn't alone. I had my new family, and that was what mattered most. "Well, Marco," Miguel said, pouring me another cup of tea, "what's next? Maybe you'll keep working with my nephew."